I see my colleague from Minnesota is on the floor, and I would welcome a question if she has one.
If the senator from Oregon would yield for a question, I appreciate that. I have a specific question, but I'd like to just actually follow up on the interesting conversation you were having with Senator Cantwell from Washington about soybeans, because I represent Minnesota, a very large soybean state, and when I was just home in Minnesota last weekend, I heard a lot about what's happening with soybeans, and you're exactly right. Senator Merkley, we're having a bumper crop of soybeans. The beans are pretty much out of the field, and Minnesota farmers and producers are trying to figure out what to do with those beans. And because of Trump tariffs, the market for China, the Chinese market for soybeans has been decimated. Trump tariffs have completely ruined that market. And as I think you said, Senator Merkley, these export markets for American agricultural products, it's not like an on-off switch. It's not like a pipe that you just open or close. These relationships in these export markets are incredibly important. And so what's happening here is American and Minnesota farmers are looking at this as they're seeing, okay, Trump tariffs have made U.S. soybeans basically non-competitive. And so China, our biggest export market, is turning to South America, in particular turning to Argentina. And American soybean producers are literally wondering how they are going to pay the bills when their operating loans are coming due right now, and they're looking at the loans that they're going to need to take out, the working capital loans they're going to need to take out for this winter in order to buy fertilizer and seed and all of the things that they need to get crops in the ground in the springtime. And it is so offensive to them that at the same time that they have lost this market in Argentina, the President Trump, is sending billions of dollars to Argentina. So, and I think I've seen, Senator Merkley, that the amount of money that the President is sending to Argentina to bail out the Argentinian debt to resolve this capital crisis in Argentina, there's one group that we know for sure is going to benefit from this bailout, and these are the friends of Donald Trump in the United States of America, the big fund managers, the big private equity firms that made huge investments in Argentinian debt, hoping that it was going to go up, and sure enough it will, because of what the current president is doing. So helping big Wall Street fund managers, hurting American farmers, that's the story of what is happening with Donald Trump and his tariffs right now. Senator Merkley, I was listening last night to what you were talking about, and you gave a really powerful quote, or a paraphrase perhaps, from the book How Democracies Die. And one of the things that you highlighted, I want to just quote here, you said, "There has to be a fierce reaction in the year that the authoritarian starts to dismantle the Constitution." Well, this is the year. And I was reflecting on this as I was thinking about what happened all across the country and what happened in my home state of Minnesota, I'm sure in Oregon as well, with these huge demonstrations that we saw all over the country. I'm going to ask you to reflect a little bit more on what you said last night and what we've seen here with this reaction to the authoritarian activities of the president. But I wanted to just share what I saw in Minnesota was really remarkable. By all accounts, nearly, maybe up to 100,000 people turned out just in Minneapolis, which is, the biggest city in my state. Minneapolis and St. Paul are roughly, 2.5 million people all in. But we had 80 of these events all over the state. And what I saw, and I'm wondering what you saw in the demonstrations in Oregon, what I saw was incredibly patriotic people showing up, people who love their country and want to keep it, people who understand that in this country we swear allegiance not to a king, but to our democratic values and to our Constitution. And it was remarkable to me to see that love of country and that patriotism. And I also saw that, and I will love to hear your response to my question and comments. I also saw a lot of people turn out at these big events who don't typically come to these, don't come to political demonstrations. It's just not their thing. But they felt compelled to do this, maybe because of what you were talking about, Senator Merkley, earlier, which is they understand that there needs to be a fierce reaction. And the year that an authoritarian starts to dismantle the Constitution, and they were there to demonstrate their allegiance to our Constitution. So maybe I'll pause there, Senator Merkley, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I so appreciate the question from my colleague from Minnesota. And the commentary I was giving is more my distillment, my impression of the information in this book, rather than a straight-out quote from it, but that essentially you have in the past the death of democracy came at the hands of men with guns. Now it's coming through people who get elected. And after they get elected, they work to erase the separation of powers. They try to get a legislature that will be more of a rubber stamp and say, we'll do what you say. Well, suddenly the whole vision of Congress laying out the programs and the amount to be spent and the policies is supplanted by Congress just saying, well, what did you want us to do? Okay, we'll do that. And then the Supreme Court hands more power, and we've seen that happen here in the U.S. as well. Certainly with the Trump versus United States, where the Supreme Court found invisible ink in our Constitution. I'm pretty sure neither of us can go through here and find anywhere in Article 1, and certainly not in Article 2, which addresses the executive, that there is any sign that they want the president to be considered above the law. And yet that's what the court said. So to the broader question of how, once you are in this authoritarian takeover, what are your odds of stopping it? And in general, the authoritarian works to entrench the authoritarian rule. So people get knocked down when they speak up, and then other people are afraid to stand up and become more timid. The press gets a little more careful after getting sued. Wall Street Journal got sued for $10 billion. Maybe gets a little more careful about what it says in its newspaper. The network, which is threatened with the possibility of losing its broadcast license, or the network that's threatened with the possibility of a merger opposition, may say, okay, you know, we're going to change our programs. We're going to get rid of that program that Trump doesn't like, or we're going to get rid of that comedian that insulted Trump. And you start to see these effects pile up, and they grow over time. So in that first year, if there is not a reaction from the people, then people assume two things. Oh, that sounded outrageous to me, but maybe it's not so bad. Maybe that telling universities what to teach, having the government tell them that isn't so bad. Maybe telling the broadcast news what to put on air isn't so bad, and so forth. It's like maybe kicking people out of the country for exercising their free speech on college campuses isn't so bad. No, if nobody's protesting, it's like, oh, well, maybe that's not so bad. And it makes it easier for the authoritarian power to get a deeper and deeper grip on the system and become the status quo. And that's why you need a protest in the first year to say, no, this is breaking the norms. This is breaking the law. This is violating the Constitution. And we are not going to take this assault crushing our freedoms. We are going to stand up and say, hell no. And then people go, oh, well, I thought those things were pretty outrageous. And look, there's somebody or some group or some force I can get behind to help know that I'm not alone, because as a normal citizen, what power do I have? But if someone else is organizing and speaking out, and that's why this march, No King's March, was so important. 7 million people 2,700 locations. You had an incredible set of demonstrations in Minnesota. We had a credible set of demonstrations in Oregon. And I went to one at a very small town. It's kind of just a few stores and gas stations. And it's in a pretty conservative county. And boy, 200 people were out on the road with their created signs. And I was really struck, especially by talking to veterans who said, you know, I volunteered. I went to war overseas because my country asked me to do it. And it was framed as you have to defend this country and this set of freedoms that we cherish so much. And I'll be damned if a president of the United States is going to take away what we fought and died for, a president who never bothered to put on a uniform. And I thought those were powerful words that I appreciated from our veterans. But that's why that first year is so important, that people know that this is not okay and that others are willing to organize and resist and push back. And then the second piece of that is the next election, because the goal of an authoritarian president is to make it more and more rigged, the elections. And if we want three examples, one right now is the president's trying to consolidate a voter registration list from states around the country, making it easier potentially to manipulate that list in the next election. A second factor is Trump's trying to get states to gerrymander in order to produce, basically divide up blue districts by attaching little pieces of it to red districts so that the blue district disappears and you get more Republican House members and less fair representation of the diversity of America, so the gerrymandering. And then he's complaining about vote by mail. You have vote by mail. In Minnesota, we have vote by mail. You're one of the highest turnout states. We sometimes say we're the highest turnout state, and then sometimes I look at the stats and go, I think Minnesota might have beat us out a little bit on one election or another. But the point is that the integrity of vote by mail is so high because it cannot be manipulated on election day. And we see that manipulation in so many forms on election day, where precincts are moved so people don't know where to go. False information is put out where to go. They're put where there's no parking if you don't want people to vote. The machines don't work. The staff doesn't show up. The lines are long. People are intimidated. They're told they can't pass out water to people standing in line, which just seems like a horror of a possibility, that people passing a law saying you can't give people water who are standing in line wanting to vote. And all of those factors really play a big role. That's why Trump wants us to vote on Election Day. More ability to manipulate the outcome of the election. So those are two incredibly important things. And then I wanted to just say, what is going on with Argentina? That we are sending them money, $20 billion and maybe $40 billion, in order to help them with their debt, which is owned by a bunch of Trump's friends. So they bought it for pennies on the dollar, and now they're going to become mega rich. And where did we pass a bill saying you can send $20 or $40 billion to Argentina? What happened to America First? This is Argentina first? I mean, this is the corruption of the president's friends first? What policy is that? I want to see that on a hat. It is, an outrageous. I mean, you think about $40 billion. That's approximately $100 for every single person in our country contributing to bail out Trump's friends who bought up Argentine debt. No, hell no. I don't know what authority he's doing that under, but let's take it away. Let's get our Republican partners to join us in saying that we should take it away.
If the senator would yield to one more question.
Yes, I will yield for a question.
I want to just follow up on something that you talked about with the attempts by the Trump administration to consolidate and get some control over our voting process in this country. One of, I think, the strengths of our country is while we should have high national standards for free and fair elections, we have control over elections at the local level. And that gives our electoral system a lot of resilience. I want to just thank our Secretary of State in Minnesota, Secretary of State Steve Simon, for refusing to provide to the Trump people our voting rolls and data about our voters as a way of protecting our local control over our ballots. And I want to just follow up also with what the senator from Oregon was talking about, with the way that the president is ignoring the rule of law, ignoring the Article 1, ignoring the powers of Congress. And I was thinking a lot about what the preamble of our Constitution says. I mean, the preamble of our Constitution says, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, and promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." That is the promise that we all make each other in this great democracy. And what I think we see happening, I wonder if the senator would like to comment on this, what I think we see happening is that President Trump is trying to undermine that promise. And he's trying to exhaust us and distract us and make us feel like we actually don't have any power to have much of an impact on what he and Russell Vought and his administration does, and that will cause us to just give up and give in. But of course, Americans are stronger than that. Americans are more resilient than that. Americans care more about their democracy than perhaps Donald Trump believes or expects. And one of the powerful things that I see happening, that I saw happening this weekend and I see happening all over the country, is Americans standing up and saying, basically, we know a bully when we see him. He's not as strong as we think that he is, and he's not as strong as he wants us to believe that he is, and we're going to stand up to it. And that, Senator Merkley, gives me a sense of faith and a sense of hope as I see people put their faith in this democracy into action every single day in the ways that is meaningful for them personally.
My colleague from Minnesota, appreciate the question, but I particularly appreciate the recitation of the preamble. And I grabbed my pocket Constitution here that I've been bringing up various points through the night. And the line that I have highlighted here from some previous time was, "and secure the blessings of liberty." Secure the blessings of liberty. You know, psychologists may say there's a hierarchy of needs. You need food, you need water, you need shelter. But we're Americans, and I can tell you liberty is at the top of this list. Like the idea that I can't say what I want, the idea that a private university can't teach what it wants, the idea a private law firm can't provide its contributions to the legal help to the nonprofits it wants to provide help to. It goes on and on of the compression of liberty. People around the world have come here dreaming of liberty. They have seen Lady Liberty with her torch held high, welcoming people from around the world. Where you may be oppressed back home, but you come to this shore and you can say what you want, you can worship as you want, you can have your company operate within the law, making its own decisions without government oppression. And suddenly, all of that is being challenged. And so I do appreciate a lot your emphasis about that this component, which may seem more abstract, if you're a family struggling with health care and your children are hungry, but even for families that are dealing with the challenge of getting onto their feet, the basic challenge, they still have the DNA of American liberty throughout their body, knowing that they may not have all the food they want, but they can say what they want. And they can criticize the President of the United States. And that president damn well better not put them on an enemies list and proceed to tell the Justice Department to go on some kind of a search to get them arrested or charged or tried or in prison. And yet that's happening right now. An enemies list. Let's be blunt about it. The president has been transparent about it. The other things he may not be transparent on. When it comes to an enemies list, he's transparent as hell. He lays it out to the press. These are the folks I'm going after. He does his tweet to Pam Bondi. Why haven't you acted yet? Why haven't you done it yet? I read one of those tweets sometime in the hours past, and it's stunning that the president clearly feels he has full ability to weaponize the Justice Department as his personal revenge factory. And he's all in on it, and we have to stop it.